Good evening, everyone. Welcome to No Judgment here with Tish Ross, the podcast. I thank you so much for joining me today, as always. I want to welcome in all of my listeners and my viewers. I know some of you guys had posted that you can't watch, but you'll have us playing, which is great. I'm excited whenever you guys can hop in and listen and absorb and maybe take some nuggets in for yourself or maybe for someone else that needs to hear some words of wisdom, or at least, like I always say, to know that they are not alone. We have so many people that come on to share their stories, their journeys, and it's really for that purpose. We want to help encourage others, and we want other people to know that you're not by yourself. We've gone through something similar, or maybe someone's listening that um, feels a certain way and thinks that maybe it's not right to feel that way. But then we have a guest that comes on and they share, I felt this way. And then the other person on the other side of the radio or the podcast is thinking, oh my gosh, thank God. So ultimately, that is my goal. I feel like that everyone that comes on um, is has a very similar goal they want to share so that we can help others again know that they are not alone. So I welcome everybody in, and I am going to be bringing in my guest. She is so beautiful and inside and out. I had the opportunity to meet and connect with Jessica through a book that we both wrote in, but I want you guys to hear her story. She has an amazing story. Hello, Rebecca. Hi, Tracy. I'm so glad you guys are here. You guys are in for a really great story, and share. If you have the platform to do so, please share, because there may be somebody that follows you that needs to hear the story. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Jessica in. Welcome in, Jessica. Thanks for being
Hello.
here.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. So, Jessica is an author, and she is also an entrepreneur, a business owner of Flairwear Boutique, and we'll get into more of that later. As you can see, look how lovely she looks with her rose in her hair, and she'll explain a little bit more where she gets that style. She has a great chapter in the book Surrender to Rise, and I read it when I first got my copy, and then I refreshed and reread last night. And such a great and powerful story that you have. And I think as many women and men that can hear it, the better. So I'm going to start off by having you introduce yourself. Jessica, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then maybe go into your childhood, what your childhood was like.
Okay, great. Thank you. I just want to say thank you again so much for having me. I don't normally talk about myself, so I'm definitely nervous, but I think it's really important to be able to share. And so a little bit about me. My name is Jessica Montalvo, and I was born and raised in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So I'm a Hoosier. I'm a Midwest girl, and so my background is in the field of education. I've been in
Hmm.
education for over 20 years, and life happens, and you're presented with an opportunity to pivot. And I've always considered myself a very creative person,
Mm.
alongside that education component. So I'm also a film, a movie and series producer.
Oh my
I'm
goodness, I
a
did not
CEO
know
and
that.
yeah, a CEO and owner of Flairwear Boutique. That's my it's a vintage inspired accessory business. And wow, I'm a writer. I'm a freelance writer. Um, yeah, I have so many interests.
Love
So I just call myself a liberal arts junkie because it's just that's my life. And
I love it.
yeah.
So,
So
and you're
that's
also a mom.
yes, I am a mom to a 4-year-old daughter. I love her so much. Her
I
name's
know
Laura.
you do. I love it because I noticed that you dedicated your chapter to her
Yes.
in your acknowledgments, and so precious. So tell us a little bit about your childhood, and I guess prior to that, the tell everyone the title of the your chapter that you wrote.
Yeah. So I knew it would be the title of my chapter. It's called My Road to Peace, and it's been quite a journey to even acknowledge that I needed to be on a road to peace.
Mm,
It's taken a really long time for me to kind of look as an observer to my life, instead of being, on the inside and, experiencing everything that I've experienced. Growing up was quite a challenge because I came from a traditional Mexican American family, and so my father, he was the breadwinner of the home, of the house, and my mother, she was kind of like the carekeeper, um, and it was pretty traditional, in that my dad, he was, well, actually both of them both of them, they come to find out they're extremely toxic,
mm,
and wow, what else? They just growing up has been a real challenge of trying to understand where they're coming from with how they parented, and then me trying to break cycles of abuse.
mm.
My for As an example, it's just, and I do go into it in depth in the book, but as an example, I always knew that I was going to continue with my education. I knew that I would go to my undergrad, and then I would go to my grad. But as an example of the toxicity that I experienced, I was getting uh, my diploma for my master of education
Mm,
degree. And my mother, that day, she told me, "You look great now, but if you were to lose more weight, you would look even better."
mm.
On the day of my graduation. So there's examples like that, like throughout my life, where it has definitely taken hold of my identity and how I express myself, even as a woman, and a very confused young girl trying to
Mm.
figure out who I was, even as a teenager. Um, so yeah, there were a lot of examples of that narcissistic personality within both my parents,
Wow.
and yeah, and it was definitely a challenge to really understand, what it was, because I just thought it was something normal that every family went through, and every person experienced in their life experience, but that's definitely not the case.
Most definitely. And I think narcissistic people, I was married to one time, and they're very good at what they do. And it is, I don't want to say incredible, but I guess in a way, because for me, the human mind, each human, whether the way they think is toxic or not, is very interesting to me. As I too have become self-aware, like I was sharing earlier, probably over the
Mhm.
last 10, maybe even longer, 15 years of my life, I started thinking, even in my last marriage, thinking, oh my gosh, I didn't even really realize how I started to um, conform or morph into and believing what my narcissistic ex was saying. He was so good at it, so believable. And I
Yeah.
think even to this day, I believe that there are some people that believe some of the things that he has said about me. And I used to
Mhm.
worry about that. I used to
Mhm.
wanna just get on a microphone and say, "Let me tell everybody how I really am. You guys
Right.
don't know. You're accusing and blaming the wrong person," but, um, we don't have to have everyone's approval, and I've learned that since, but,
Mhm.
um, so I was reading too in the book, um, that you had even married,
Mhm.
uh, a man similar to how you were raised, is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes. I've actually been married twice, and married twice, and it wasn't until much later that I realized that I was marrying, parts of my parents.
Mm.
And my father, he was a Marine, and so he was in the military for 4 years as a Marine, and then I later on married a man in uniform, married the military. And he was in the Air Force and transitioned to the Army. Um, and I just, it was, of course, after you're out of the experiences, I became fascinated with learning about mental health and mental health
Mm.
awareness,
Mhm.
just because I knew nothing about mental illness.
Mhm.
And so my first husband, he was diagnosed as bipolar, had PTSD, depression. And so at the end of that marriage, he was homicidal and suicidal. So I was in fear for my life, for a long time. I would always
Mm.
have to look behind my back and make sure that there was no one there. And, I was always looking behind myself, just to
Mm.
make sure I was safe. So of course, safety is and will always be a factor for me,
Right.
that I've been able to identify. Um, and I think that's, it's something natural for people to, look for safety within their surroundings and their circumstances and environment. And then my second marriage, I married an ARC. So that was it. It was, of course, when you're experiencing, it's not fun, but after the fact, and you have a chance to look back, it's fascinating the way that the mind works, and the manipulation, all of those experiences is just absolutely fascinating.
Yes.
um, but not everyone can get out of those experiences and be able to pick up the pieces and try to put them back together, and for you to be a whole person again. That
Right.
took me a very long time, especially with my ex narcissist, um, because he was a very prominent person in the community. He worked for the mayor, and it was just a different level of an experience,
Mm.
to come down from. I kind of got lost after that.
Mhm.
I definitely, I mean, as with most narcissists, that I've learned, there's usually a smear campaign that happens after the fact, and you're like, I'm not this person, like
Right.
how can you, when people think that they know a person so well, and then if you're like, because he's a covert narcissist, you don't know what happens behind closed doors. And and there's a fine line there too. I mean, if people don't take sides, which I don't, at this point in my life, I don't worry one way or another if a person takes a
Right.
side. But at the time, it was like, well, there's no one there for me. There's no one for me to be able to talk to. Um, so it was really an interesting time. And even within that time, there was a little bit of self-reflection happening,
Mm.
but not until I met my daughter's father did I finally say, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me?
Mm.
There's
Well, what
something
was
wrong
it
with me.
about your meeting your daughter's father that made you realize
There was something
there's
wrong.
something different? I shouldn't there's
Yeah.
and I hate to say there's something wrong with me or to because I
Right.
feel like that's giving credit where to someone who doesn't deserve it, I guess. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I used to feel that way as well.
Uh-huh.
I used to think that of myself as well. Why did I not catch this? What's
Yeah.
wrong with me? Um,
Right.
was it my fault? Like they're so
Yeah.
good at making you feel like maybe it was my fault. Maybe I
Right.
was the one.
Uh-huh.
And because they're good at manipulating,
Yeah.
controlling, turning things around, always it's always your fault, that you never
Yeah.
can get a word in edgewise. You can never
Mhm.
it's always you. It's always you. And so
Oh, yeah.
then when you
Yeah.
live like that and you're married to someone who you, I guess you thought you love or loved and you thought they loved you,
Mhm.
then why would someone who loves you make you feel that way? But that's their
Right.
disease, not
Right.
us. But they're very good at making us feel like that. So what was it
Yeah,
about
and we're
your
yeah.
husband or your daughter's dad?
Yeah, it's like you start to question yourself, and then you even question because I had lost my short-term memory. I mean, it's there, but it's not the best, with all of the trauma that happened from my ex-husband. But then
Wow.
when I met my daughter's father, that part was really difficult, simply because I didn't I still was not, assertive enough, to establish boundaries,
Mm,
and, I think that's where I know, I if I had potentially, established some boundaries, um, and felt like it was okay for me to, like, I had for me, it was always I have to give myself permission, to do these things because
yeah.
I matter. I love myself,
Mhm.
and it's really difficult to be able to grasp that concept too when all you've known is nothing but abuse from the parents, abuse from their example, them abusing each other in front of you, you seeing the dynamic of a toxic relationship and knowing that there's certain things that shouldn't be happening but they do. And I think that's what happened with me was, um, I was becoming a little bit more self-aware, but not to the point where I was not caring what anyone thought of me.
Mm,
And, and even my daughter's father, because he once he found out I was pregnant, he was like, I don't want anything to do with it. So, and then I I was like, well, okay, I made my decision, and I went through my pregnancy journey all by myself, and
mm.
it was terrifying because I knew nothing. I knew nothing. I still know nothing. It's being a parent is very difficult, and then not having any type of tools,
Mm,
uh, from the toolbox to be able to parent, because here I was, this broken person, but not knowing that there were parts of me that needed to be fixed.
right.
Um, and you don't know that at all. I mean, I think, even with, normal families and everything, and you become pregnant, have your first child, there are parts of you that you have no idea, that need to be taken care of and addressed and you know, looked at.
Yes, I think too, exactly. Um, I had shared earlier with Jessica that I was having a conversation with a very young girl. She's in her early 20s. And we were talking about, sometimes we question ourselves and we ask ourselves, why did it take so long for me to realize and to know or to understand? And the answer to that is some of it is that you are too young if when you're a child to even know, is a parent being a good parent or not a good parent. The maturity level is not there. You don't know what you don't know, and you don't even
Yeah.
know, as you get older, you don't even know that you're supposed to be healing from something when you didn't even know that you were being abused. I mean,
Right.
you really, and it is it is huge when you become self-aware. When you really start becoming self-aware, then the uh the puzzle pieces start coming together and you start realizing, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I maybe I shouldn't be thinking this way. And yes, our parents do the best that they can with what they have or with what they know, or maybe they were abused, and maybe they were raised by narcissists as well, or maybe my dad was raised by an alcoholic, and and that's what they know. But the problem is that, um including myself, with parents, you're parenting a human being, and that
Mhm.
human being being so young, their brain, your brains are like a sponge, and they absorb not only what they hear, but what they see. And what they see you do, they think it's right. Or
Mhm.
what they hear you say, they think uh, maybe that's how everybody talks to everybody, and so it's not until later when you start realizing that wasn't even right,
Yeah.
So my prayer for everybody is that we become self-aware. And I see a comment here from Shades of Grey. It says, at we don't know that at all until that one moment you realize, and then the
Mhm.
journey begins. And that is
Absolutely.
the truth, right? So I want to read
Yes.
something in your chapter. This is the book that Jessica wrote a chapter in, and it's called Surrender to Rise. And I was reading it, and I was highlighting some things. One of the things that you said, it kind of goes with what we were just talking about. You said, and I quote, "It has taken me time to unpack the numerous stages of my life that led to the realization and awareness of the abuse, trauma, and pain in which I have endured. Within the layers of my baggage is the inner child I have haphazardly nurtured, yet is a beautiful masterpiece that has taken time to rediscover." I think that's exactly what we were talking about. And
Yeah.
um, something else that you said was, "The foundational groundwork I was exposed to showed me just how necessary it was for me to continue being redirected because I lacked the emotional maturity and awareness in which I needed to understand the type of relationships I entertained. There were so
Mhm.
many close calls. I was foolish to think that I had any business being where I knew I had no business being."
Mhm.
Um, you don't understand the influence it has on your life until you do.
Yeah.
And that is the absolute truth. And so
Mhm.
what was it that um, your daughter's father decided, "I'm out. I don't want to have anything to do with our daughter"?
Mhm.
And what was it within you that, you know, led you to keep moving forward, to um, scratching the surface and trying to
Mhm.
rediscover yourself? How did you even know? I mean, what made you decide to, "I'm going to move forward. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to rediscover"?
Yeah. The biggest, you know, when I even think I talk about it in the book, like when I saw those two, bubblegum pink lines on my pregnancy test, I knew. I was like, wow, this is incredible. This is amazing. And never in a million years did I ever think that I would be given the opportunity to make a choice, to have that choice.
Mm,
Um, you know, growing up too, my mother, she said, children will ruin your life. Don't have children.
mm,
It was always, and even now, she's like, I can't believe you had a child. You had everything going for you. I mean, you had your career, this, and that. And I told myself early on, he was like, I am not here to hurt anyone.
right.
Um, I knew that about myself, that um, that if I were to not, follow through with what I'm being given, um, I would be hurting. I would be hurting myself. I would be hurting, what God has planned. And Because I do believe in God. I mean, I've definitely explored religion too, because I've always been a very naturally curious person,
Mm,
and so I've learned about all kinds of different religions, even like astrology. I mean, I wanted to know everything,
right.
and I still do. I want to know everything,
Yeah.
but yeah, but ultimately, it was that fact, knowing that I was not put on this earth to hurt anyone.
Mm,
And I told my daughter's father, I said, you are entitled to experience life in the way in which you wish to experience it.
mhm,
Um, and I told him that several times, like even, as we were, just talking before I even found out I was pregnant. You experience life the manner in which you choose to,
mhm,
and whatever that looks like. And for him, he he didn't want any part of it. And but I was not, so that was when I learned how to set boundaries. I was not about to bring a child into the world and allow him to come around whenever he felt like it,
Mm.
because that's detrimental
Yes.
um, to a child. That's detrimental. As an adult, I understand it, but not as a child. You can't
Right.
do that to a child. Um, and I even tried to make it easy for him. Like I so much as I had gotten a job in New York because that's where he's from. And I had gotten a job there at one of the universities, and he was like, "Well, I don't even know how often I'm going to be able to see her. I don't know how often I'm going to be around." So like, okay, well, I see what you want, and you don't want any part of it, so you can't just part time this. This isn't
Right.
this isn't if that's your decision, then you're going to live with that decision.
Right.
And so yeah, that's I had to establish boundaries. Had to.
I love that,
And
Jessica, because you're
yeah.
so right. It is, and again, as a woman, and I even speak for myself, we as parents, we try to make the best decisions that we can for our children to protect them. And
Right.
let me ask you this, because one of the things that I was talking to one of my friends who was also divorced from a narcissist, we both were talking about, we had the decision to make that when my kids' father, when they were, let's see, almost 3 and 7, they're now 24 and 29. But at that time, he made the decision on his own to not participate and then do all the other things that he chose to do.
Mhm.
I had two choices, and let me ask you this: what your thought is on this? One was to well, the Lord told me not to say anything to the kids about what their father did until they were old enough to understand. But at the same time, their dad wasn't in the picture. And so, and I also knew not to badmouth. That was his choice, not mine.
Mhm.
But I always wondered, did I tell my kids too late? Should I have had told them earlier? Was the decision that I was making at the time, which I believe it was, the best decision for them and for us?
Right.
My hope and my fear was that they wouldn't resent me. And my fear was that they would, because of the timing. Again, should I have told them sooner? Were they wondering how come daddy doesn't come around? I'm like, well, that's his choice. But a kid such as you and I, we don't know. We don't understand that choice, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. We don't
Right.
understand the choices that others make for whatever reason. Like you said, live your life. You made that choice. That's on you.
Right.
The part that sucks about that is that you have two children here that are suffering and will suffer until they become self-aware, the remnants of your decision. And so I struggled with, I have a choice. Do I tell the kids sooner that this is what your dad did? Or they're not mature enough to understand right now if I tell them, but they're not mature enough even now to understand why he chose to not participate in their lives. What is a mother to do? What is a father to do? I mean, whoever is in
Yeah.
the situation.
Mhm.
And I hate the fact that, and I guess we all go through that, we suffer the repercussions of a parent's decision.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
it's tough being a parent when you're trying to be a good one, and because of maybe someone else's choices on how they want to live,
Yeah.
you're still a parent and your children are suffering the repercussions of your sin or your decisions. And that's a hard thing. And so I think as my children got older, those were some conversations that we had. This is the reason why I made this decision, right or wrong. Hope you don't resent me. If you do, tell me why. And so I can understand that resentment. We have family conversations, which I love, because in my Hispanic family, traditional Hispanic family, we talked about nothing.
Right.
I knew nothing. I was just told, "Do not come back home pregnant." And I was like, "Well, how do you get pregnant?" Knew nothing.
Even the fact that we are talking right here, doing this, is unheard of.
Absolutely.
We're not allowed to share anything.
Yes. How dare you say? And I'm like, I mean, hey, I'm just talking about my journey to healing, my journey to
Right.
peace. And I'm not talking about you. I'm just saying this is what's taken because of you and because of your choices or whatnot. But
Right.
do you worry about resentment?
Oh, for
Your
sure.
daughter?
Always. I mean, you know, early on, we had a conversation. Me and my daughter, we had the conversation in terms that she would understand. I said, some families have a mommy and a daddy. Some families have a daddy and a daddy and a baby. Our family, we have a mommy and a daughter. So, as she progresses through life, I want to make sure that I'm as open with her as possible. And I think that's where I can at least find some level of comfort in knowing that she is very receptive. I mean, we're so close. It's amazing. And there's a reason for why we're so close. I truly believe that there's a reason why we're as close as we are, because of my life having to pivot.
Mm.
But I want to make sure that I explain to her, in her terms that she's able to understand, throughout her, the progression of her life, and then answer any question. I just want to be as transparent with her, as possible, because there was absolutely no transparency, with my folks. I mean, it was always a questioning, and then it was always, oh well, is it because of me?
Right.
And I just don't want to put that on her.
Right.
Um,
Right. It's so sad that
yeah,
as a child that we question, was it me? Was it something that
yeah,
I did? As a child, you're
yeah.
questioning yourself.
Mhm.
So let me ask you this, for some women or some men that are listening that may have been raised or grew up in a situation where something similar, where things weren't discussed, but maybe there was verbal abuse or neglect or whatnot. So one of the things that you said was that your mom had told you on the day of your graduating with your master's, is that she told you that you looked good, but you would look better in the dress if you had
Mhm.
lost more weight.
Yeah. Mhm.
So you and your mom, obviously, you still have conversations, because you mentioned that she still says things
Mhm.
like that to you. How do
Oh,
you, and I know boundaries is a big part of it, but um, how do you have a relationship with your mom? Maybe for someone that's listening that's thinking, "Man, I can't do it."
yeah.
How do you have your relationship with your mom?
It is very difficult. Most of me understands, that there's a mental illness part.
Mm,
There's a
mhm,
mental illness aspect to it. Most of me understands that, but the baby me, the child, the inner child in me,
mm,
if I don't, prepare myself for when I am going to be exposed to her, my inner child will go back to that, self-loathing and,
mm.
lack of self-awareness and all of that, because simply because it has been ingrained in us. So it's been a conditioning,
Yeah.
since we were so young. I mean, I have a twin sister, and both her and I, like, they put us against each other to compete with each other, and then they would always tell us that we were fat, like, throughout our lives. I mean, she would always, say, you don't want to look like a refrigerator, or you don't want to do this, you don't want to do that. And so, and then I've had, of course, so many different, issues. I With that, self concept. What is the I was anorexic for a little while during
Yeah,
my undergrad.
self-image. Hmm.
Yeah, self-image, yeah, that self-efficacy part, and then, I was bulimic for, during my first marriage. So it was, it's been such a crazy, life journey, with just, the way that I answered to how I was feeling.
Mm.
Um, and it wasn't until much later that I said, okay, that this is not right.
Mhm.
Maybe therapy is something that would be ideal. And of course, yep, now I'm this huge advocate. I will advocate for therapy to everyone, all of my students too. Like every chance I got, I would tell my students, it's okay to go to therapy. And it's okay to be who you are,
Yes.
because even that, that identity part, my parents, they didn't want us to identify as being Mexican,
Mm.
and I have a lighter skin, and my mother, she would always say, hey, you can get away with not being, Mexican, so I don't want you to be who you are. So even that is like a huge identity crisis,
Wow.
in high school for me, because I was I was rebellious, and I said, this is who I am. This is my
Mhm.
history and my foundation, and you know what who I am. And they didn't teach us Spanish. I went to school, and I specifically got my degree in Spanish because I wanted to know my language, and I also wanted to say, hey, look, I got my degree in Spanish. So, haha,
Yes. Oh
yeah.
my gosh. Jessica, I when raising my kiddos, I remember knowing that as they got near high school age, even before then. I mean, I've always wanted my children to be their true, authentic self, and boy, are they! And I love it. They're both very
Yeah.
different, and I love it.
Oh,
Um, but I remember not forcing them to think that, while college is great and it's fantastic, and I think it's nowadays it's almost like you have to have a degree to find a good job. And so I'm not
mhm.
saying for no one to tell their kids to go to college, but I gave my kids the option, um, if you want to go to college, but during your senior year of high school, when you hear all of those kids saying, I'm going to school for this and I'm going to school for that, or I'm going into the military for this because my dad was in the military, and, I'm going to
Right.
be a doctor because my mom was a doctor or a nurse or whatnot. I want you to know that not every kid has their life all planned out at 18 when they're graduating and getting ready to go to school. I can guarantee that uh, half of those kids will change their major. Hopefully, they'll change their major into what they want to go to school for. I had actually led a group of seniors. They just graduated high school at a camp. And I've shared this story before, but we went around in a circle. And parents, this is such a it's so important to let our children use their gifts
Yeah.
to become what they're passionate about. It makes them
Yeah.
happy, regardless of, I mean, what's money doing for us now? Nothing. We can't even afford to grocery shop anymore. But
Right.
so to be happy and to do what makes them what they're passionate about, and
Yeah.
to use their gifts because they've been given those gifts for a reason.
Mhm.
And there was a young lady in this group of graduated seniors that we went around, and I just asked the students to tell me a little bit about themselves and what were their next steps or what were they thinking about doing since they've gotten out of high school. And a lot of kids are going around, well, my dad's a doctor, and so I'm going to go to school to be a doctor, or I'm going to the military because my dad was in the Navy, and same with the
Mhm.
Air Force. My dad was a pilot, so I want to be a pilot. And that's great if that's what they want to do. But I had one girl say, well, my brother is a lawyer, my sister is a nurse, and my dad was a lawyer, and my mom was a dental hygienist.
Mhm.
And so I think I'm going to go to school to be a dentist. And one of the things that I did share with the group was, while your parents have great wisdom and they are guiding you in the direction they feel is going to be good and best for you, um, I'm going to say that if what you're going to school for now is because your parents want you to become that and you don't really want to become that, don't waste your time going to school to be something that someone else wants you to be, because you're
Right.
not going to be happy if you go to
Right.
school being something that they're living vicariously through you, or they want you to be something that they couldn't. So the last day of camp, we were at camp 5 days. On the 5th day, they went around and were just sharing their experience. And she said, "Hey, Miss Tish, I just want to tell you, I'm going to go home and tell my parents I really want to be a teacher." And so I was so happy that, and I said, "If your parents have a problem, they can call me. Here's my phone number," because,
Yeah.
um, it really was that, and I was open to the phone calls. I honestly was, because I just wanted them to know that it's okay to be what you want to be. It's okay to use your gift of teaching if that's what you want to be. You want to be a teacher, you're going to be a great teacher.
Mhm.
And so I think I even read in your book too that if you are in your chapter, if you're living for to be someone that someone else wants you to be, you'll never become who you are supposed to be. It was something similar to that, I think,
Mhm.
that you wrote.
Yeah, because I do talk about that in my chapter also, because yeah, that's what I did. My parents, they gave us a choice. They said either be a nurse or be a teacher, and so I chose to be a teacher, and that's the funny part, because when I was, in my roles within education, I would always tell my students, I was like, your parents, if they're expecting you to be something that they want you to be, do what you want to do,
Mhm.
like embrace your talents, because I think that's why, I have all of these other, things that I'm doing now. It's like I'm not
So
in
about
education
that,
right now.
tell us a little bit about when you, I know that I read that you at a young age were
Mhm.
sewing, using your mom's sewing machine, and that you were even making some clothes for your Barbie. Tell us a little bit about um, the artistic self, and how you got into owning
Own
Flairwear.
business. Yeah. So as a little girl, I mean, I've always, I've always loved music and art and theater and, pretty much all the liberal arts stuff.
Mhm.
And if I were to do it all over again, I'd probably go into all of it. I would go into fine arts and, learn, the formalities, yeah, and theater, music. I love to sing, and
Mm.
there's just so many things that I would have embraced. But as a little girl, it was just something that I spent time doing. It was sewing and learning how to sew on a sewing machine, and making pillows and clothes, and for my Barbies and for myself. And home ec was one of my favorite classes in middle school. Even
Mm.
um, the sewing part, not so much the baking part, but the sewing and creating, and making my own patterns, and just I would have sketches of clothes, and just different outfits, and what kind of materials I would use, the dream materials, like
Mm.
velvets, and all kinds of different tulle, and beautiful gowns and everything. And one of the things about when I was a young person, my parents, they grew up in, they grew up in like the 50s. So because we came later in life, we kind of experienced the entertainment from like the 50s, the black and white,
Mhm.
Turner Classic Movies, the black and white shows, TV shows. And I just grew up, listening to the Rat Pack and Elvis, and who I love Elvis,
The good
and
stuff.
just Sinatra. I mean, everybody, all of the big 50s,
Uh-huh.
singers, and watching the beautiful musical theater movies from the 50s,
Mhm.
and seeing all the beautiful women, in their long gowns, dancing and tap dancing and everything. And it just made me happy. And I always loved just going back to that and just creating.
Mm.
So it was during my first marriage in 2011, because my first husband, he was deployed most of our marriage, and like going on tours and everything, and just at different places, stateside, and
Mm-hmm.
um, but so I would have a lot of time on my hands. And so in 2011, I decided that I would kind of, like embrace the 50s. I would embrace the 50s look, the pinup girl look.
Mm-hmm.
And I had one of my best friends at that time. I introduced me to like a clothing line based out of Los Angeles, where they would make, like vintage inspired dresses. So
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of embraced it, and it became a big thing in my life, because it gave me an opportunity for me to connect with my womanhood and my femininity.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that I'd always battled with too. Growing up with, my mother, just constantly criticizing my size. And I'm like a small person, like I'm 5'5", and I'm average, and just average everything.
Right.
But I learned how to embrace, even at my size, embrace, the style. And I wanted to know everything. So we do a lot of research, and I mean, I'm a nerd that way too. Like once I connect to something, I am just all in and doing research and learning, the music, the genres, and the
I
literature
love
and
it.
everything. Yeah. So I learned, the pattern making and how to make dresses for myself. And but I would also go antiquing and try to find like vintage goodies.
Mm-hmm.
So I got really interested in doing that, and going to all kinds of different antique shops, and finding the gloves that would go on,
Yeah.
to accentuate the style, and then accessories. I couldn't find any accessories that I really liked, so I decided to start making them myself. And it became it. It was a hobby, but then it became a business since 2012. Um, but my life has always been in education, so
Mm.
it was always something on the side. Like if I had time, I would make something. I would make hair flowers, and it was just me, with trial and error and using different materials to then kind of perfect my craft. And then life happened. I kind of, my creativity came in waves
Mm-hmm.
throughout the years since then, just because of, I had to have a job, obligations, all of that. And at the end of 2023, yeah, because it's 2024. At the end of 2023, like mid, I decided, you know what, it is time. It is time for me to become an LLC. And and then kind of backtracking, my daughter, she was born with severe eczema, and that was like a whole nother like life experience too, something that I didn't know too much about. And I didn't know how to handle either. Uh, Not only being, a single mother with minimal help, but
Right.
also not knowing how to handle her skin issue.
Right.
And because she would always be sick, and it was something constant. And me, my work ethic, I mean, it's like having to miss so much work. It was very hard on even my mental health.
Sure.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and and at that time, I had, like big titles. I was a director, and I was just trying to navigate motherhood, and doing it solo, and not
Yes.
having the resources that I needed to really understand what I needed. So I pretty much left education altogether in 2022, and kind of delved into my artistic side. I started to write again, and I did some freelancing, And then I started producing films.
Wow.
It was really interesting. It's been such an interesting journey. And then with that pivot, that the last straw for me happened at the end of 2023 when my daughter, she got sick again, and I just couldn't handle it. At that point, I was so tired and burnt out and sick. Even I was suffering from like bronchitis and walking pneumonia, and my body, it just couldn't it couldn't recover
Mhm.
because I don't have time to recover. I have to be mom all the time, and
Right.
I'm always on. And so I got really sick, and it was taking a toll on me going to work, and then she getting sick, and so I said, okay, let's see where life takes us. So bye, bye education. So I pivoted into entrepreneurship, and finally got my LLC. And I've been so happy because I've been um, with my daughter full time. She's with me full time. She has not been sick in the whole 9 months. She has not been sick. I'm the one who's been sick.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations. I mean,
Thanks.
to hear, you know, your childhood and the foundation that was laid, the verbal, emotional, even physical abuse, because you had even injured your back or hurt your back where you had to have surgery and learn how to walk again, and the short-term memory. And it is incredible what abuse can do to a body, even when you are trying to ignore the abuse or try to you're living in survival mode, but yet your body, it's still taking a toll on it. And
Yeah.
but then look at you and where you are now, you and your daughter, and you're an entrepreneur, you have your own business and making beautiful flowers. If somebody wanted to order some, how could we get a hold of
Um,
your items? Do you have a website?
I'm Yeah, I have my own website, flairwearboutique.com.
Okay.
And then I'm on Instagram and Facebook. You can find me Flairwear Boutique, and I do markets. I'm pretty much everywhere. Yeah.
That's amazing. That is so
Thanks.
amazing. And I'm going to go through some of the comments that people had posted right quick, and then I have a final question
Mhm.
for you. Hi, everybody that came in. Gosh, a lot of people came in. There's Scotty and Goat Days, David, Beverly Moffat. Hello. Shades of Gray, how are you? Sammy, I see you. Marianne Bimler, hello. Homestead Outlaws, how are you?
Oh,
But there was a comment that I saw. Where is it? I believe that it was one where I had asked you about your relationship with your mom and how do you have one with her now? And Shades of Gray shared, I finally chose not to have one
mhm.
with her mom. I just could not anymore with her. And I think sometimes, we can, hello, Butler Family Farm. How are you? My goodness, we have lots of guests in here.
Oh, good.
But I think sometimes, and I know our pastor has always told us that you can love from afar, you can forgive. It doesn't mean you have to be in a relationship with, right? I mean, forgiveness
Right.
is for ourselves, and hopefully the person that we have forgiven or maybe are forgiven by helps to change us and rethink maybe who we are, and also to let go was something that you had said as well, to let go. We forgive, we understand, but if we do move back into that childlike, the inner child in us that is, I think, for me, ever healing, I become aware. And then, yes, if I am speaking to someone maybe who has abused me, whether it's an ex-husband or whatnot, it does send those, and I know that a lot of people don't like to use the word trigger, but it does trigger, or the trauma starts to, and I can start feeling myself being short of breath, and I have to take a deep breath and know that I'm in control of myself. I can't control what they do. I'm in control of my actions. I don't have to be around them for a long time. I don't have to be around them at all if I choose not to. In the words that you said, Jessica, you choose to live the life that you choose to live, and that affects you, and I will do the same. And so I want to ask you a question that I ask everybody that comes on to my podcast. One is, after everything that you have been through, what would you tell that little girl? What would you tell little Jessica now?
Yeah, I would say don't sweat the small stuff.
Mhm, mhm.
Because, when you're experiencing life, it's really hard to process as you're going through it. But there is a reason for all of it.
Mhm.
Every single piece that you experience, you're going to look back on it and say, like, oh, yeah, that's why. Oh, yeah, that's, I'm doing this now. Okay, yeah. And as I say in the book, is start over as many times as you need to get that inner child to say, hey, I'm okay.
Yes.
I'm everything's okay.
Mhm.
And
I love that.
the road is rough. but,
Yeah.
but forgive yourself. You have to. That was another thing with the other comment. I understand, and the thing is that you also need to surround yourself with the right people. And we don't understand that as products of trauma until we are self-aware,
Mhm.
because we will then continue to put ourselves in environments where there's negativity and like toxicity. But once we're self-aware and understand that we deserve God's love, we deserve love,
Mhm.
then we will understand, okay, yeah, we deserve to then surround ourselves with people that will uplift us and not try to bring us down.
Absolutely. And I think, until we start uh, becoming self-aware and start healing, I know I'll speak for myself. I was in relationships with people whom how I felt about myself. I was with someone who, if I felt um, unworthy, I would be with someone who would treat me that way, and then I started healing, and then I started thinking, I deserve better than that. And then I would be in the next relationship. It all depended on where I was in terms of my healing and where I was within myself. And I think that could be the same for whom I was with. They are with you in terms of where they are at mentally. Where they are at mentally, they will be with you. And so until you can fully be healed and self-aware and set those boundaries and be with someone who understands and knows those boundaries, it'll be a minute before you can find that partner that you're equally yoked with, for sure. Okay, my final question to you is, after everything that you've been through, Jessica, everything from child till now, who would you say that Jessica is? Who are you today? Who is Jessica Montalvo? Who
That's
are
a
you?
great question. I am a creative who loves people,
Mm,
and I'm a mom, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of me
mm.
and what I've become, and and what I hope to contribute to the world.
I love that. That's so beautiful. You are doing great things, Jessica, and you just did
Thanks.
just an amazing thing today by sharing your story. So many comments, so many people listening, and hopefully more will share and continue to share so that others can listen and maybe hear a little tidbit of that sparks maybe a little bit of, maybe I need to become a little more self-aware, and then scratches the surface, and then the layers start coming down, and then we start becoming who we are meant to be, not what others want us to be. So I thank you so much for joining me this evening. Thank you for saying yes. And gosh, God bless you, and much success to your business, and your daughter having such a great mom who has open, transparent conversations. What a blessed young girl, and what a blessed mom you are. So thank
Yes.
you so much for coming on, Jessica. I
Thank
really
you so much
appreciate
for
it.
having me. Yep. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Of course, of course. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate you guys coming in. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And again, please share, share, share. I know that Jessica's story is going to help so many. I know it's helped me, and just hearing her story, I know it's going to help others. So please share if you have the platform to do so. Thank you so much. And I hope that you guys have a blessed night, and we will see you here in a bit at Pretty and Pooch at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Have a great night. Thank you all for coming in. Bye, y'all.